I always thought Japan was on top of the world. Clean streets, high-tech everything, a disciplined culture. But after being here for a couple days, I realized that something was completely off. Japan's economy is completely broken, and it's been like that for decades. But why is that? Why does a place that feels so advanced feel so stuck in the past? Turns out, this goes way beyond Japan. In the 1980s, Japan was unstoppable. It was on track to dominate the world. To put it into perspective, it was the second largest economy. People in their 20s had 2 to 3 homes. Yeah, I said that right. 2 to 3 homes to their names. Nowadays, people can't even afford a house, let alone 2. Stocks and land prices skyrocketed. At one point, land around the Imperial Palace, which is where we are right now, was worth more than the whole state of California. Like, what? That's crazy, because Tokyo is actually way smaller than California.
Japan in the 1980s has become this manufacturing powerhouse, right? This tech giant that's producing computers, TVs, stereos, cassette tapes. The issue at the time was that the Fed had hiked rates to 18% because of the huge problem of inflation that had emerged during the 1970s. That meant that the dollar strengthened substantially against the yen and against the German mark. In 1985, the monetary authorities got together and said, okay, we need to strengthen the yen against the dollar. What they do is they decide, they're like, we're gonna front run this issue of potential recession by lowering rates to 2.5%, encouraging an explosion of credit and speculation, right? All these banks start lending like crazy, and we're talking like 2008 on steroids. And that results in this massive bubble of speculation that starts to bleed over into every single sector of the economy.
So you can understand, the Bank of Japan was just giving out free money, telling everybody that they can borrow as much as they liked for as little interest as they wanted. So if you're giving free money, why wouldn't you take it? When they pulled the rug, everything went crashing down. The BOJ ended up increasing their interest rates, and they choked off lending. So they stopped giving out everybody free money, and then they raised the interest rates. That's like your credit card going from 20% interest rate to 40% overnight. You'd be like, yo, hold up, what are you doing? Then the stock market lost 80% of its value. That's pretty self-explanatory. Because of all of this, 5 million people lost their jobs. In the financial crisis of 2008 in the United States, 2.6 million people lost their jobs. So that should have been a reset. The perfect clean slate, the perfect fresh start. Yeah, that never happened.
And the aftermath of this bubble, popping, and the stock market falling 70% and the real estate market falling 75%, the Bank of Japan, now they don't have the window loans to manipulate the market, so they have to find some other way. And the best way that they could think of is last time we created a bubble with 2.5% rates, let's go to 0. So let's go even deeper. Problem was, the deflation was so strong that it wasn't enough. So they say, let's create something new. And so they invented QE, which is essentially printing bank reserves to buy financial assets.
The yen is getting weak in terms of how rapidly it's weakening, right, is kind of astonishing. One of the most significant reasons that I think that your viewers would be very relevant to is there is capital flight out of Japan. The government has so much debt that everyone feels that they're on their own to build up, kind of retire, because the government's not going to fulfill its obligations for Social Security and all those sort of things because of how much debt it has and how much money it owes. Holding cash is basically the safe thing to do in Japanese society. Save, 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 save. But when you have inflation in Japan, which is currently happening, and you have the value of the yen getting crushed, you're going to see this huge pool of forgotten cash that's in bank accounts and mattresses and desk drawers and all that around the country. Some of that move out of the yen and into different assets and currencies and things like Bitcoin, things like gold, real estate, and whatever it is, but anything except for the yen. So the currency crisis is, I don't think it's quite underway yet. You ain't seen nothing yet. The yen is getting weaker and weaker and weaker. On the ground level, it means socioeconomic misery. It's not good. It's not a good thing at all.
All right. So the money's broken, the system is broken, and what we can tell from Japan is that a small group of people in the top are the ones that make the rules, decide to print money, and obviously regular people pay the price.
But the real question is, how does one escape that kind of system? My friend, relax, because there's still hope. Let's go find out. We're here at the Metaplanet shareholder meeting, and I don't think you guys understand. This is history in the making. What's happening here is insane. For the first time in 30 years, Japan's stock market hit a new all-time high. Yeah, I said all-time high after 30 years. That's like buying a stock in 1990 and finally breaking even 34 years later, right when you're about to retire. Like, that's not growth. That's a lost generation. The problem is that even with all of that, the Japanese government makes it really hard to escape. But obviously, there's a way around that. Here's the solution. This company called Metaplanet is giving the Japanese investors exposure to a unique asset that actually gets you out of the system.
What is my role at Metaplanet? My role is Director of Bitcoin Strategy. My job is to raise capital, issuing bonds, issuing equity, buying Bitcoin. Japan has had uniquely low interest rates for a long time. They're still quite low. The short end is less than 1%. As inflation started to increase, many people are starting to seek alternatives. So Bitcoin offers, sort of a radical technological solution. That's a message we're conveying, is that there is an alternative now. In our opinion, it's the best money the world has ever seen. We're kind of in this gold rush phase where, the world hasn't figured it out yet.
What's it like to give Bitcoin exposure to millions of Japanese investors?
It's incredibly exciting, incredibly inspiring. We know that Japan has been looking for interesting new investment opportunities, something different, something special. Bitcoin can represent that in so many ways. Japanese retail investors that have 9 trillion yen of cash sitting in their bank accounts, just to hold it there for the next generation is the worst possible thing they can do. The yen has been weakening as purchasing power has been declining. That is not the path to securing your future. And so Bitcoin is something that I think easily solves that. Bitcoin is a scarce asset, it's growing in value. That will give people options and hope.
Japan used to be the second largest economy in the world, and now it's sort of like the 5th. How could have Bitcoin avoided that?
I wish there was a more kind of clear and direct answer for how Bitcoin can solve everything. I personally think Bitcoin does solve everything. For large nation states, it might take 10, 20, 30 years, a generation. If there are more companies like ours in each country wanting to onboard more people into Bitcoin, I think those are the countries where the citizens will benefit.
The permissionless nature of it, it's that it is untethered from the systemic risks of our financial and monetary system. With every bank account or every other asset you hold, other than something like gold, if there was a financial crisis, everyone's exposed to it. And with Bitcoin, you truly own your own destiny. Japan is ground zero for what happens when your money is broken, what happens to society when you have broken money. And I don't think it's a coincidence that Satoshi Nakamoto is a Japanese name.
Can Bitcoin save Japan?
Not only can it will save Japan.
Japan isn't some failed experiment. It's a warning. This was one of the strongest economies in the world until a handful of people in the Bank of Japan decided who wins and who stays behind, The question is, do they see it? Do they realize what's happening here? Because the thing is, after 30 years of being stuck in the same cycle, they finally have a chance to break free. And if Bitcoin catches on here, that could change everything.